All right, guys, here is objective 6, and we are going to learn division. So we are not going to do long division, okay? I'm going to skip that. We're only going to learn synthetic. It is one of the students' favorite division because it's easy to follow, and the steps are really easy to be able to work with. They're small numbers, not really a lot of crazy math going on. So we're going to skip the first two, A and B, because that is for long division. If we have time, I'll come back and teach that someday. But for now, we are not going to do that. Okay? So in the test, I'm only going to ask you to use synthetic division. Long division is really confusing, and people make a lot of mistakes anyway. So I'm just going to teach synthetic division. That means we're going to work on these problems back here. Example, divide using synthetic division. Okay? So you look at this problem and you say, we have a binomial, a trinomial, nope, we have a polynomial, we have 4 terms, and then we're asking you to divide by x plus 5. So some people may say, oh my gosh, there are 4 terms, then it must be factoring. No, it's not factoring like the way I just taught you before, because we're asking you to do a division right there. Okay, I'm asking you to divide. I'm not asking you to just, here's a polynomial factor. I'm asking you to divide, so I'm not going to do grouping 2 by 2s. Okay? The first thing you need to do, the very first thing you need to do is find the root, what I'm going to be dividing by. To find the root, you get this little binomial, x plus 5. You set it equal to 0. And then I subtract 5 from both sides. We get x equals -5. That's the root I'm going to be using. Okay? So it's always from the little binomial that we're asking you to divide by. There's a little special setup that we use to do the synthetic division. You use the root. That's the one we found right here. And you set up this little box in this manner, right, like that, for synthetic division. And right here, we put the leading coefficients. Okay? So I'm going to show you how that works. So I found the root here. That's the way I set up right there. -5 is the root. I set up a little box, just like I told you right here. However, I need the leading coefficients all lined up here. So right up here, I need the leading coefficients of that polynomial with 4 terms. The leading coefficient of the first term is a 1. The leading coefficient of the second term is not the leading, but the coefficient is a 6. And then the coefficient of 3x is a 3, and then the -10. However, there is something very important that you need to pay attention. The powers. The powers must all be in descending order, and they all must exist. We cannot skip powers. So let me make a note myself right here. Do not skip powers. Okay, we need to look for all powers. All powers must exist. So I have a 3. Okay, then I better have a 2, 1, 0. So if I start with the 3, which is the highest, here's the 2, and here's the 1 right there, x to the first power, and then 0, okay, because there is no more. So 3, 2, 1, good. That's what we want. Okay, so I have all powers. If I start with the highest, all the descending ones must exist. Now I'm going to get the leading coefficient. The leading coefficient of x cubed is a 1. The leading coefficient of x squared is a 6, positive 6. The leading coefficient of an x to the first power is a 3. And then we have the constant -10. Okay? So in order to do long synthetic division, it says right here, carry down the first term. All right? So I'm going to bring down the very first term. I checked, all powers existed. I took the leading coefficients. I got the root. Everything is ready for me to start following these steps right here. So I drop down the first term. Right here is a 1. And then it says right here, the root is the multiplier. So I'm going to grab -3 and I'm going to multiply times a 1. Okay, so this is a multiplication that I'm doing right here. -5 times a 1, which gives us a -5. Then I put inside of the box the result of this multiplication. inside of the box, you get to add the numbers. So you can create another dropped number right here. So a 6 minus a 5 is a 1. And then you get to multiply again. Negative 5 times a 1 is negative 5. Okay, so negative 5. I wish I would have lined up correctly. And then I have a 3 minus a 5. 3 minus a 5 is a negative 2. And then we get to multiply again. Negative 5 times a negative 2, it's a positive 10. So when we add the negative 10 with a positive 10, we get a 0. And that is exactly what we wanted. And I'll tell you why. Okay? Remember in 4th or 5th grade, okay, if someone asks you, is 3 a factor of 15? Is 3 a factor of 15? Yes, because if I divide 15 divided by 3, well, 3 times 5 is 15, and when you subtract it, you get a remainder of 0. So yes, we want remainder 0 because that means that that value is a factor of what you're dividing, okay? Now, notice that 5, is 5 a factor of 21? Let me see. 5 times 4 is 20. If you subtract, you get remainder 1. So no, 5 is not a factor of 21. So when we get remainder, it's kind of like, nope, it's not a factor, okay? So back to our polynomial here. Because our remainder was 0, we are happy. We like it, okay? So that means, is the x plus 5 a factor of this original polynomial right here? Yes, it is a factor. Yes, that was no remainder. Okay, that was no remainder. So yes, it is a factor. Okay, so what can we conclude? Let's go back and rewind really quick. What did Mrs. Myers do here? First, I make sure that I do not skip any powers. I must have all powers. If a power is skipping, I'm going to use a 0 to hold the place for that power. Okay? And then I solve for the root. I always want the root, the opposite of what is in here, because I set it equal to 0. And then we get the leading coefficients. And then the negative 5 is the multiplier to generate another number to go in here. And then we add, multiply, generates another number, and so forth. Let's do one more example, of course. One example is never enough to understand. Let's do one more. So let's first find the root. The root is, when I look at this, is a 2. How did you get that? Well, I just grabbed my value right here. I am dividing by an x minus 2, so I set that equal to 0, and I got that the root is 2. Okay, so 2 is my root, and then I'm going to set up my little box right here. Then, after I do that, the next thing is check for all powers. All powers must exist. So I start with a 4. If you start with a 4, then you better have 3, 2, 1, and a constant. Okay? So the leading coefficient of an x to the 4th is 1. The leading coefficient of an x cubed is a 5. But where did the x squared go? Okay, it was 4, 3. There is no 2. So we're going to put a placeholder for a 0. Okay, because there is no power of 2. And so that's 4, 3, 2 holds. And then we have the power of 1 right here, x to the 1st power. The leading coefficient is a negative 2. And then we get the 6, which is just my constant, positive 6. Okay, so let me double check to see if you understand. And I'm going to use a little blue pen here. The 1 is the leading coefficient of x to the 4th. The 5 is the leading coefficient of x cubed. There is no x squared, so I'm going to put a 0 value. That's why there is no x squared, 0. And the negative 2 is to the power is the coefficient of x, and 6 is my constant. I'm going to put a C for constant. Now makes sense. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 for constant. Okay, I checked all the powers exist. Now I can get to carry down my first term of 1. On the outside, what's happening outside? Multiplication. What's happening on the inside? Addition. Okay, that's what happens on the inside, addition. Okay, so 2 times 1 is a 2. We put a 2 right here. And then we add. 5 plus 2 is 7. And then we multiply again. 2 times a 7. Okay, forget a 1, we're moving on. 2 times a 7 is 14. So we put a 14 down here. And then we add. 0 plus 14 is 14. And then we multiply again. 2 times 14 is 28. 28. And then we add the numbers together. Negative 2 plus 28 is 26. Okay? And then you multiply it again. 2 times a 26, that is 2 times 2 is 4, 52. Okay, so it's a 52. 52. And then you add. 6 plus 52 is 58. Holy moly. There's a remainder. Not okay. Okay, so is x minus 2 a factor? Nope. We have the remainder of 58. Not okay. Okay, so we got a remainder, not happy. So that's not a factor. All right, let's try one more time. I strongly suggest you pause me there for a minute. Boop, pause it. Try it yourself, and then we resume it. Okay? All righty then. So let's see. Let's check for the root first. First we want the root, and the root, when you look at the divisor, we are dividing by an x plus 3. Therefore the root is negative 3. Okay? If someone raised the hand and say, how did you get that? Please help them figure out how I got a negative 3. Never mind. So, here we go. Let's go ahead and check all powers. Check for all powers. So first, I'm going to set up my little root, negative 3, and set up my little box, and I'm going to check for all powers. To the 4th, we have a 1. Cubed didn't show up, so we're going to put a 0 for cubed. Then I have a squared, negative 7 is for the squared. And then we don't have a first power, didn't show up either. And then we have the constant, negative 18. So let me rewind in case some of you got lost. The 1 is for the x to the 4th. The 0 is for x cubed that didn't show up. The negative 7 is for the x squared. And then for the x power, power of 1, nobody showed up, so we get 0. And then we have the constant. See? 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, constant. Okay? It has to exist. It has to stay organized. All right. Now we get to drop the first number. 1, uno, Juan, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Multiply it. There we go. Multiplication. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Then you add inside. Let me write my little box. Inside, 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Nice. And then you multiply it. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And then you have negative 7 plus 9 is 2. Okay, just 2. And then you multiply it again. Negative 3 times a 2 is negative 6. Okie dokie. There we go. And then you add it again. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. Nice. And then you multiply it. Negative 3 times a negative 6 is positive 18. And then you add negative 18 to positive 18 is 0. Voila. Yay. Okay. We got it. No remainder. So is that sucker, x plus 3, really a factor of that polynomial? Yes, it is. We got no remainder. Hope you stayed awake through this, okay? So try your best. Look at my work. It's impeccable. I've showed all the steps, okay? X to the 4th, 3rd, 2, 1, constant. Okay, check the root, check all powers, leading coefficient, multiply it, and we're good to go. Okay, so you will have your homework, only synthetic division. Okay, good luck, guys. I miss you. I'll be back soon.